On November 29, 1947, the United Nations General Assembly cast a vote that would alter the course of modern history. This vote approved the partition of Palestine, a decision that paved the way for the establishment of the State of Israel. It wasn't just a matter of redrawing borders. It was a deeply emotional and contested decision, representing the aspirations of the Jewish people for a homeland after centuries of persecution, while simultaneously building resentment and rejection among the Arab population. The aftermath of this vote continues to persist through decades of conflict and negotiation. What led to this moment? How did a single vote spark a series of events that still shape the Middle East today? For centuries, the land of Palestine had been a shared home, where Arabs, Jews, and Christians lived among olive groves and ancient cities. Life carried on with its own rhythm, but everything began to change as two big ideas began to grow. Zionism is driven by the hope of creating a Jewish homeland, while Arab nationalism grew in the region, fighting for freedom from colonial rule. After World War I, this peaceful balance began to crack. The League of Nations handed control of Palestine to Britain under a mandate. Britain promised to create a national home for the Jewish people, but also said they would protect the rights of the Arabs. However, these promises clashed, and Britain found itself caught between two opposing sides. After World War II, the tensions only grew. The horrors of the Holocaust left millions of Jews without homes, searching for safety. Many sought refuge in Palestine, arriving in waves. For the Arab population, this felt like their land was being taken. Jews and Arabs were fighting each other, and both groups turned their anger toward British forces struggling to maintain order. Unable to find a solution, Britain turned to the newly formed United Nations for help. In 1947, the UN proposed a bold plan to divide Palestine into two separate states, one for Jews and one for Arabs, with Jerusalem as a special international city. The United Nations had no idea that it was a decision that would forever change the destiny of this land and its people. After years of planning for the possible solution of the conflict between Jews and Arabs in Palestine, the time had finally come to take action. On November 29, 1947, the United Nations General Assembly held a historic vote for Resolution 181, known as the Partition Plan. They decided to split Palestine into two states, one for Jews and one for Arabs. The resolution passed with 33 countries voting yes, 13 voting no, and 10 didn't vote. For the Jews, this was a fulfilled dream. After years of suffering, they finally had a chance for their own country. But for the Arabs, it felt unfair. The plan gave 55% of the land to the Jews, even though they were only a third of the people living there and owned very little of the land. Then, the rest of the 45% of the land was given to the Arabs. Of course, the Arab communities did not agree to the plan, and this started widespread protests from them. After the vote, fighting started. Jews and Arabs attacked each other, and the violence grew worse. By May 14, 1948, the situation reached its peak when David Ben-Gurion, the leader of the Jewish community, declared the creation of the State of Israel. The Arab countries around Palestine responded by sending in their armies. This started the First Arab-Israeli War. The war lasted for months, and hundreds of thousands of Palestinian Arabs lost their homes. The events of 1947 to 1948 started a conflict that changed the Middle East forever. The impact of that crucial vote is still felt in the region today. The UN vote in 1947 for the Partition Plan changed everything. For the Jewish people, it was a dream come true. After years of persecution and the horrors of the Holocaust, they finally had a homeland. The creation of Israel gave them hope and safety and became a proud moment in Jewish history. But for Palestinians, it was a different story. The plan gave more land to the Jewish state, forcing many Palestinians to leave their homes, villages, and communities. This event, called the Nakba, or catastrophe, is remembered as a time of great loss and pain. It shaped their history and their fight for their land. The fighting didn't stop there. Arab countries around Palestine rejected the partition and joined the fight, leading to the First Arab-Israeli War. This was just the beginning of years of wars and struggles over land and power. The Cold War made things more complicated, as powerful countries like the US and the Soviet Union took different sides. The effects of the partition plan are still felt to this day. The plan was meant to bring peace, but instead caused more conflicts to arise. Until now, the land is divided, and the violence that started after the announcement of the plan has never stopped. Today, Israeli airstrikes on Gaza continue the conflict that started with the partition. The failure of the partition plan can be seen in the ongoing attacks in Gaza and the West Bank. Gaza is under blockade, with limited access to food, water, and other resources. Frequent military attacks have made life very hard for Palestinians. These problems are a direct result of the conflict that started with the partition, showing how the plan's shortcomings still affect millions of lives today. The vote to divide Palestine was meant to solve a problem, but it created new ones that are still unresolved until today. This shows how difficult it is to find fair solutions in a deeply divided society. The events around the partition also show both the strengths and weaknesses of international organizations like the United Nations. While the vote showed the international community's capacity to act decisively, it also showed how difficult it is to implement those decisions in real life. The 1947 partition plan was meant to solve the conflict in Palestine, but it caused new problems. It led to years of violence, displacement, and division, which are still seen in the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The plan's failure shows the difficulty of finding fair solutions in divided societies and the limits of international efforts to help. As the crisis in Gaza and the West Bank continues, the partition's legacy reminds us of the need to learn from the past to find peace and justice. What are your thoughts on the UN's decision to partition Palestine? Do you think the world could have taken a different path? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for tuning in to our journey through the past. If you enjoyed exploring history with us, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. What historical events do you want us to dive into next? Keep exploring and catch us next time for more eventful insights.